Good to go?
We are now. Yes, it's live now.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is the Wednesday, March 2nd CBTA Fall Line Working Group for the CBTA. So with that, we have electronic statement posted regarding virtual meetings. So we will continue to meet in that format for the time being. And next, let's go ahead and do a roll call. Janice?
Certainly. Town of Ashland, Nora Amos. Chester, and she did note that she'd be back in about 5 minutes. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Walker. Hanover County, Mr. Badunez.
Here.
Henrico County, Chair Yor.
Here.
Ms. Meidler.
Here.
Vdot, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblett.
Here.
Ms. McAdory.
Here.
Plan RBA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel. Mr. Bushing. Miles is with us. He's not come over yet as a panelist. And City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Here.
Great, thank you. That concludes the roll call.
I see Miles coming over now. So thank you, Janice. Next item would be consideration of any amendments to the agenda. Chet, are you aware of any additions or changes?
No, sir.
All right. Next item, approval of the February 1st, 2022 meeting minutes that are included on page 2. Everybody's had a chance to review. We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Joe. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Sharon Smidler, second. Oh, sorry, somebody else said second too.
We'll go with Sharon, who I heard. Thank you. So everybody in favor, say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Next item, open comment period. If anybody registered to provide comments?
We don't have anyone registered.
Very well. All right.
There are, Mr. Chair, there are a couple people in the meeting as attendees. And we would ask it, if there are any questions as we move through it, to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And staff will monitor that and address questions as they come in.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next item, let's move into Vdot update. First on that list would be any updates that Jane, you, Mark, or Liz may have regarding the status of the state budget update.
Okay, Todd, thanks. As you know, the original governor's proposed budget had 207 million plus or minus to support trail construction in the Commonwealth. Fall Line Trail, Shenandoah Valley Rail Trail, and the Eastern Shore Trail were the 3 that were listed. The budget has made its way through the House and the Senate. The House amendments, they did amend that line to basically narrow it down to 9,200,000 for the Fall Line Trail. They cut the total from 207 that they only have 21,700 total going to trail. So a pretty big cut there in the House. On the Senate side, their amendments, they have 20 million the first year in the budget for the establishment of a state trails office within the Department of Transportation. And then they also set aside 20 million the first year and 20 million the second year for multi-use trails in the state. And those funds will be awarded through a competitive solicitation conducted by the CTB no later than September 20th of this year. So 2 starkly different budget lines from the House and the Senate, and obviously neither one really in alignment with the governor's proposed budget. So as that process plays out, I think over the next couple of weeks is when the General Assembly needs to reconcile their differences. And then obviously, once they come to an approved budget, it goes back to the governor for him to make any amendments. So I don't think we're close enough yet to know exactly what's going to be coming out of the state budget for Fall Line Trail, but it looks like either it'll be something dedicated specifically to Fall Line, or either a competitive solicitation process for some amount of money, whatever they decide. So that's kind of what I have on the budget. I don't know. I don't have any other inside information other than what's out there publicly. So.
Thank you for that. Do we have any idea what a competitive solicitation process would look like through the
I
season?
assume it's going to be smart scale-esque, or, kind of everything now is gone to the application process. So that's what I would imagine it to look like.
Got it. Very good. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
So year 1 and year 2, the 20 million to establish the office, and that would be FY23.
Yes, that would be 23.
And then that next 20 million, the 40 million that's showing up, is that 23 and 24 or
Correct,
24 and
yes.
25?
That's the way it's written, 23 and 24.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions on that item?
Is there a link that can be shared?
Yeah, I'll see if I can get it as we go on with the meeting and put it in the chat.
Appreciate it, Shane.
Sure.
Thanks. Next item would be any update on the design guidelines from Liz or team?
I'll defer to Liz on that one.
Good morning, y'all. I'm happy to update you guys. So I think most of you were on the call when we had the first stakeholder meeting. We talked about the purpose and sort of what the design guidelines would look like. We got a lot of feedback in that meeting, as you know. We've made some changes and some updates. The consultant's been working. We're planning to have an existing conditions report, kind of like, what we know now, and then also a report on the state of the practice, like the best practices for similar type facilities. We'll have that out hopefully to this group next week. If not, it will be the week after. So mid-March, we'll have a report out. And I'm anticipating that the next stakeholder meeting is going to be late March, early April. That'll keep us on track to still complete the design guidelines in early May. It's, like I said before, it's a really fast track, but so far we're on schedule. And that's the end of my update, unless there's questions.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Any questions for Liz?
Todd,
Yes, Joe.
so, at that first meeting, there were some questions about the overall scope, and it seemed to be that there were some elements that I wouldn't say missing, because I think the consultant was providing what was scope, but there was some expectation among members that some of the other items that weren't included in the scope, how are those being going to be addressed?
Happy to answer that, Todd, if you. So we had a follow-up meeting with John Vitolkis, Chet, you were there, and the consultants and a couple folks from Vdot to kind of continue that conversation, because Joe, you're exactly right. What we've done and what'll come out with the existing conditions report, I'm glad you brought this up because I forgot to mention it, is it's table of contents, which is basically an outline, and you'll be able to see what we're including and what we're not. And the approach is going to be sort of a 2-section document where we'll have what is needed for a design build package to construct just the shared use path itself will be sort of one section. And then all the other stuff, we'll have guidance on signage, benches, all the amenities. That'll be in a separate section. It's all still going to be completed by May. We just want to be able to separate out what we might give to a contractor for construction. So and when I send that stuff out, I'm obviously going to be looking for input. So I think that table of contents, Joe, will address most of the questions that were raised in that meeting.
Okay, thank you. That sounds good.
Thank you, Liz. Barb, you have your hand raised. Is that a new question or is that from before?
Nope, it's a new one. So my takeaway from that first meeting was that we really hadn't made decisions. There was lots of back and forth about the design guidelines. So that what is coming out next week, those are the decisions.
No, that's a good question. Though we're basically just going to be sending out, this is what is happening around the US and other countries, state of the practice. And then Tool has gone down and done a review, and they're kind of identifying some risks or questions that need to be asked and addressed by that group. So we're kind of halfway there. We're going to be making some suggestions based on what other folks are doing, and then maybe having the group make suggestions on how to address the issues they've identified. The next step would then be to them to take feedback from that and go back and try to propose some decisions. And then you guys would be, the stakeholders would be part of the group that would then help make that final decision.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, move on to the design build scenarios. I guess Mark and Liz, y'all are gonna jointly cover this.
So Todd, I can jump in there with that. Certainly appreciate Chet forwarding out to folks 3 proposals that we have tabled for the group's consideration today. Summarizing it at a very high level, part of what we had discussed with our folks internally on a design build best practice moving forward, and we had discussed this before a little bit, was maybe it would not be best for having a very large 200 million type size project to move forward with a design build. It may limit the number of folks that would be interested in bidding on that project. And again, like we discussed last time, the discussion really focused on maybe having a smaller project in that $20 to $30 million range, maybe focus on segments that could minimize the right-of-way and utility impacts. So what we've tabled for you this morning are 3 package options just to get some feedback from you guys on whether or not any of these options or packages look attractive, if you're interested in them, or if you would like us to look at something different. Something different. So summarizing very quickly, package 1 is the southern segment. Just full disclosure, this is not entirely within the CVTA boundary, though a major portion of it certainly is. Anything within Chesterfield is certainly within the CVTA boundary there, but that scenario is 32 million in terms of a calendar year 23 estimate at this point, and does include going through sections of Petersburg, Colonial Heights, and Chesterfield as well. It does cross the Appomattox. It does connect to the trail system on the southern side of the Appomattox down in Petersburg right now. So there's some connectivity on the southern end. Package 2, a little bit smaller. Certainly it's a $12 million segment on the northern end of the trail. And again, from a connectivity standpoint, it connects with what was or has been completed in Ashland already, travels through Hanover County and connects and includes the Chickahominy Bridge Crossing project right there on the border between Hanover and Henrico. Just as an update, we have gotten approval for the Chickahominy Bridge Crossing project to move forward as a non-federally eligible project. So it certainly adds some flexibility to us that way. And if we then include that in the design build section that travels through Hanover County, we could proceed with that entire project as a non-federally eligible project. Certainly it leaves us some options open there. The third package we tabled for you today is a $28 million project that is generally in mid-Chesterfield. This is just another area that we felt may have fewer right-of-way and utility impacts. What this doesn't necessarily have are some of the connectivity benefits that we have with both the northern and southern segments. So again, for your consideration, certainly looking for any feedback if this is helpful to you guys, and maybe a recommendation on how we can help at this point. So 3 packages on the table for discussion. Happy to answer any questions.
Todd, I've got a question. This is Barb.
Go ahead, Barb.
On this third package, is that the Galena Galena to Chester Road, then connecting to the Chester Linear Trail. Yeah, I guess that is what that is. Okay, I was just trying to get oriented.
Yep, no, that good question.
So just to clarify, it's not connectivity necessarily to the Fall Line Trail because there's that gap to the south, but there is a lot of connectivity as far as into Chester, where there's a good sidewalk network. There's our Chester Linear Trail. And then the section that's up there on Route 1 that's purple, we have, that's definitely our priority in Chesterfield, is working north to south because of active transportation needs in that area.
And Barb, I appreciate you bringing that up. Certainly the connectivity observations were really tied to Fall Line Trail connectivity,
Yeah.
certainly not trying to indicate that there wasn't connectivity with other facilities. And your point is dead on for that. Absolutely.
Can we take a look at that first one again? So this one's 31 million.
There is a gap in there with a pending TAP application and a CMAQ funded area that would not technically be able to be brought into a design build option that was proceeding non-federally at this point. So we would need to certainly see how the TAP applications fall out relative to that pending segment. There is nothing that would necessarily keep us from proceeding with this project as a normal design bid build project. We could certainly incorporate multiple segments in there, even ones with federal funding, and have a continuous segment that goes all the way through. It would make the price a little bit more certainly than the 31.4, but that 31.4 does not include the CMAQ and TAP sections.
And Mark, I just wanted to add that this could also be sort of a phased approach. If you were to choose, if the decision were to put money on one bundle, the idea is that we could 6 months to a year later, if funding were available, do the second bundle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And nothing says we have to move forward with design build options on all of these segments. Again, we're looking at package 1 right here that could potentially move forward with a regular design bid build approach. If that was, a good option for us to move forward on, certainly that option, regardless of how we look at it, would need to involve funding outside of CVTA. Certainly one of the challenges there, as you take a look at the specific alignment, particularly on the gold 1A section, and even somewhat in the 1C to 2A section, it meanders in and out of Chesterfield and Colonial Heights. So defining exactly where that may be within inside or outside CVTA boundaries then becomes a little bit more challenging from an estimate perspective. It could be very easy to say anything outside the green is non-CVTA from a funding perspective, and then the green could potentially receive CVTA funding if that is the desire of the group.
Drew, I know you have a question.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. So I think I partially started hearing the answer to one of the questions on what's the time frame of these packages. And it sounds like it's kind of dependent on the group. And is that true? That is.
So Duran, I'll answer that question with a couple of comments. At this point, there is certainly a desire to move forward as quickly as we possibly can on a segment of the trail if possible. And if there's interest in doing that, we do have funding from Mr. Brown through the CTB last December that did allocate monies towards the Fall Line Trail effort. So we could certainly work with that to advance any segment of the trail that Mr. Brown would be supportive of, obviously. But our focus at this point has been trying to do our legwork and homework with some pre-scoping dollars that we have available here to position a project to potentially move forward this calendar year, if possible. Part of what we're going to need, if it's within the CVTA boundaries, especially package 2 and 3, would be the recommendation and support from this group, just from a concept perspective as well as a funding perspective. So we're certainly looking for feedback from CVTA.
So further clarification, you're looking for a selection of one of these three to be done before the calendar year, or to be selected at least, and moving forward?
So when I say moving forward, if all the stars aligned and we were able to pull this together, potentially we could move one of these packages forward to actually putting it out as a design bid, design build option this calendar year. That does not mean construction would start this year. It doesn't mean the project would be finished this year, obviously. But when I say move forward, I'm saying getting it out to advertisement for design build. That's a desire. That's a goal we're stretching towards.
Yeah, thank you. I do understand that. And then are all of these that are presented non-federal aid?
No, they are not, or at least not at this point. And what's on the screen right now, certainly if we were to include the CMAQ and TAP funded sections, there is no way we would be able to move forward, certainly on those sections, with it being non-federal. Just by the nature of the funding, they would have to be federalized. For any section of the trail, we would need to seek concurrence from folks downtown to make sure that developing it as a non-federally eligible project makes sense. And generally speaking, we need to outline kind of the benefits and positives for taking that approach. It all depends on the type of money that is allocated to the project. And again, for the Chickahominy crossing, we were able to certainly say and make the case and get support and approval for proceeding with that section as a non-federally eligible project. So if you scroll down a little bit to package 2, the crossing on there is actually part of what we're highlighting in gold right there. That is an existing UPC that has funding on it right now. If we are to establish a segment that goes beyond just the Chickahominy crossing, we would likely need to ask for and receive a similar concurrence on proceeding with it being non-federal. I do not expect that would be any issues. The same justification we had on the Chickahominy crossing, both from a funding perspective and the advantages of being able to move forward quickly. I think those same advantages would certainly apply there. So I feel pretty confident that package 2, we would be able to proceed entirely with that one as a non-federally eligible segment.
And the non-federal allows for the design build versus the design bid build?
You can do non-federal, either design bid build or design build.
But I mean, the one that would have to be federal would have to be the design bid.
Not necessarily. We can do design bid as a non-federally eligible project as well. Again, we need to look at each of the options kind of on a case-by-case basis and weigh their own merits. Package 1 would be a little bit more difficult simply because we have sections on there. If we were to include the gray sections, if we were to include them, the project would have to be separated.
Okay. And then I guess some of my question becomes, thinking about the limited dollars, based on what Mr. Mann came back with the governor's budget, and then the CTP dollars, the CTB dollars, and the CVTA, and none of these having the city of Richmond in there. I have to ask, I have to ask that the consideration that the available dollars that we know we have, and how that will impact the city of Richmond's portions being funded. Because we don't want to be funded on hope, wishful thoughts. based on the budget and where it is with the, and not now being fully funded. So how are these packages taking that into consideration?
Rona, that's a good question. And just for clarification, these packages were really put together to table options for your consideration, for the group's consideration on what could be ready to move forward right now to get the Fall Line Trail efforts kind of kicked off in terms of trying to identify projects that could start to take advantage of some of the dollars that have been earmarked for this project. By no means do even all three of these all of these three proposals added together do not total even the available money that's on the table. So this is the beginning of a conversation that would need to continue in terms of what may come after that and what may come next. Again, the focus for what we brought forward to you today was here are three options that we think may be good options that could easily move forward quickly right now, just from an ease of construction, minimal impact to right-of-way and utilities, and a readiness for moving forward in terms of those particular project segments right now. But your point's dead on. The discussion needs to continue in terms of where and how to put the remainder of the funding. We're just offering some options on what we think could kickstart these efforts right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
All
Mark.
right. So we have an order, as I remember, the hands coming up, Joe, Barb, and then Miles. So Joe.
Yes. Excuse me one second. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Let me get my hand down. Sorry. Gosh, I wish I was a little bit more prepared when I printed out the agenda package. For some reason, the last two sheets didn't print, so I really was only thinking that the packages being proposed were package one, which had several project segments. So just a lot of questions here. Would somebody please explain what, just kind of take one of these, 1A, for example, and explain what does GAAP calendar year 2023 mean?
Yeah. So
What
Joe,
does GAAP mean? I don't understand
slides,
GAAP.
what we're trying to identify is where we have, the calendar 2023 total is the estimate for the colored segments that are identified. The gap for calendar year 2023 is where we do not have funding for that we don't have funding already identified for the project. So if you're looking at package one, the segments that are colored gold, blue, and green do not have any funding on them right now. So our 23 total and our 23 gap are exactly the same because we don't have any dollars on the project right now. If you scroll over to, if you look, for instance, at the package three, it's the same way for those two segments that were selected, the yellow and purple. They also do not have any funding. So gap and total are one and the same. Go to package two. That's where the difference is, because part of what is included in that gold segment is actually a project that already has funding on it, namely the Chickahominy Bridge crossing. So the gap between the total project for that gold segment in package two and what we already have on it, the gap, what we would need is that 7.3 that's identified.
But what, so back to package one, there in parentheses, it indicates CVTA funded, CTB funded, et cetera. What does that mean?
Okay, Joe, I'm trying to look and see where.
Right.
Those are
right
scenarios.
Excuse me?
Those are kind of scenarios. If the CVTA were to fund 9.4, that they're kind of identifying what each chunk would cost and where the funding could come from.
And Joe, the point of that certainly also is to emphasize the fact that sections of the blue and gold are outside the CVTA boundaries.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's probably a little confusing. But I understand where you're coming from. So
We can put like a legend together, Joe, if that would be helpful.
I think it would. You know, gap is okay. Balance to complete is typically what we've been using, but that's okay. I understand what you all are doing now. It's again trying to. This is a lot. This is a whole lot of information to digest. The CVTA in just a little bit, a couple more minutes, Todd, and then I'll yield. The
Take your time.
CVTA funding for this is over 100 million over the next 2 years, but those dollars have not been assigned to any particular segment, correct?
Correct.
So those are FY 21 and 22 dollars. In other words, those are in the bank dollars. Shouldn't we be looking to, and I know you just put together 3 scenarios, and there are other scenarios in addition to these that could be put together. But shouldn't we be looking to assign at least that 107 plus whatever Mr. Brown would allocate? So this is significantly less than the 100 million that's currently available for this work. Can somebody speak to that?
Joe, I can certainly start. Again, the options we were trying to bring forward to this group for consideration right now were potentially options that might be able to move forward quickly as design build sections. You're exactly right. There is another part of the exercise that needs to identify where the balance of the dollars would need to go. So just for clarification, the proposals this morning are, if you were to be supportive, here are 3 options that we think could be design build options if interested.
So clearly we could, I think we could move forward if it was the desire of this group to move forward on all 3 of these packages, utilizing the CVTA funding that is currently available.
I'll chime in real quick on that. Joe, Vdot we don't believe we can handle 3 design build projects right now. So that's kind of what we were proposing. 1, at least, if Vdot's going to administer it. If a locality wants to administer it, then maybe there's an opportunity to do more. But Vdot would like to start with 1 design build.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Todd, I said just another minute. Well, let me let others speak, and then I may come back. Thank you.
All right, so Barb, then Miles, then Ron.
Yeah, so the way I was looking at this is sort of a phase 1 proposal. Picking one of these, I was glad to get the clarification about the manpower issue, that you wouldn't be comfortable doing all 3, that it would, just 1 at a time. Would you be able to do 1 every year? You stagger it, and we can come back to that. But I guess there's about 144 million total available. These guys equal about 72 million, as long as bids come in good. And so we still have about half the funding that we need to develop a big picture plan for. And I feel like that would make Dorona more comfortable, is if we could kind of have that big picture idea of how we're going to tackle all that we can with the money that we've got, which, it doesn't seem like we really need to think too hard about what's coming out of the governor's office at this point, because it'll be minor. Is that something you can do? Well, first of all, can you do a design build every year, or do you need like every other year? Manpower wise, what would you be more comfortable with?
I think we could probably ramp up next year and probably do more than one. I think talking to our design build office, we got quite a few design builds statewide in the pipeline, and they would just struggle to put together multiple packages this year. So if you guys really wanted to do two, I could certainly push and try to get support for us to do two. I don't think I would get much support to do all three.
And then how far away are you all from kind of doing a more zoomed out, big picture, here's what we can do with all the money and a phasing plan?
I don't know that we were looking at that. Mark, I'll defer to you a little bit. I think we were kind of looking to this group to give us some guidance on that.
That is correct. I mean, we've provided the kind of spreadsheets with the different segments that are funded and the costs that we anticipate at this point for the segments that are not funded. So at that point, that's our kind of deliverable at this point in terms of where we are. We had not really anticipated putting a phasing plan together. And like Shane said, that's really where we were looking for some direction from this group.
I had just one more comment. When we're looking at package number 1 here, down in that gold section, it's a very, very little part that's not in CBTA. Just the crossing of the river. Otherwise, it's in Chesterfield. So then the blue section, even that on the diagram, I suppose that's correct. But I just want folks to know that that gold section is primarily still in the CBTA. There's just the river crossing that is outside.
And Todd, if I may chime in, we're actually working on a little map to zoom in on the end of the Chesterfield portion to show where it kind of zigzags in and out of Chesterfield to Colonial Heights.
That part's very confusing.
Yeah, I think showing that'll help.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Liz, thank you for that, because for those of us that don't live or travel that area very often, I've looked at the fall line map and it's very confusing to me. So that that would be very helpful to the group, I think. Barb, did you have anything else? All right, we're going to move to Ron and then Darana, and then I have a couple comments, questions. So Ron.
Question back to Mark. You had mentioned a couple of things earlier on in the presentation. The first part, you said that projects that are TAP or CMAQ funded are going to have to be design bid build as part 1. And then
No.
the second, no, say it again.
No, I said the projects that are CMAQ and TAP funded would have to be federally eligible.
What does that mean?
We design them according to all the federal requirements and regulations that would be able to move forward with a project, not as if it is a state funded project or a locally funded project.
But it could be design build.
Pardon me?
But they could be design build along
Absolutely.
these pieces of work. The other part is you talked about the Chickahominy River crossing, saying that could be their term right, non-federalized. Is the Appomattox River in that same situation, or is that something different?
We would need to seek approval for that, and we can only do that after we have the funding identified for that. And for everyone's benefit, the approach that VDOT generally takes is to any project that is a 6-year plan project. We generally will proceed with those as if they are federally eligible. We follow all the federal guidelines so that if we do have to federalize at any point the funding sources associated with that project, that we're able to do so. And so we can maximize our use of federal resources when there is flexibility for that. So our policy for a number of years now has been to follow federal requirements and guidelines, regardless of the type of funding that is on that. But we do have a process in place where we can seek relief from that. And that's what we've done on the Chickahominy crossing. And certainly one of the first tests is whether or not you actually already have federal money on it. And that one did not.
Thank you.
All right, Darana.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick comment. on again how I guess the first portions of the funds are beginning to get spent, and just again a comment and just remembering that the city of Richmond, I think that there's given some benefit to like ease of constructability. But that ease of constructability, I think, is more, there's an advantage to the counties versus the city of Richmond with built environment. And again, asking for that consideration that the projects that the ease of constructability isn't taken too far and unfairly based on, you know, we're a built environment in an urban setting. And I just wanted to say that in making sure that, you know, I'm going to keep saying that, you know, we have to ensure that, you know, again, that the projects that happen in Richmond aren't looked at as complicated because of the environment that is being built in.
Duran, I think, did you ask also about how we are spending money initially on some of these efforts right now?
Well, I just said that, again, further consideration for phasing and, you know, giving us that bigger picture of how those dollars will be spent, kind of piggybacking on what Barb was saying.
Gotcha.
Because while I understand Vdot's charge with getting something moving, again, I don't want the continuous process to be, because this is easy to do, this is what we're doing next. And that, you know, I just don't keep getting told that, because I know that the city of Richmond segments are more difficult and have right away or have acquisition or have whatever you denoted as why these segments were selected. The opposite of why these were selected.
I see heads nodding. Shane, do you want to address that?
Can I jump in real quick, Todd? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Dorona, I think you guys are in charge of the CVTA money. This group and the authority decide where that money is spent. That is not VDOT's charge at all. You know, the only money that we have any input on is the CTB money, and that's at Mr. Brown's discretion. So, you know, as far as where the money should be spent, we're making some suggestions, but it is totally this group's and the authority's choice how and where and when they spend the money. You know, VDOT is going to move forward with some sort of project. You know, whether it is the portion up in one of these choices here. If we don't get some consensus pretty soon from this group, we will probably move forward with the portion of the trail that is outside the CVTA boundaries. So it would be either a portion of project candidate 3 here or 2. I can't remember which one it is. We're scrolling around, but whichever one it is that is outside the CVTA, we will look to move forward with that using CTB money. But as far as the other schedule and what we're going to spend, that's at the discretion of this group. So.
And I thought to that, Mr. Mann, I thought that the CTB money was for the segments that the region identified on the follow line. So I'm trying to figure out which one you're saying that's outside of the CVTA boundaries.
The only portion I'm aware of the fall line trail that is outside the CVTA boundaries is the southern end of the trail. And as we just discussed, it kind of meanders through Chesterfield and Colonial Heights and into Petersburg. So those portions would be portions I would definitely look to advise Mr. Brown that we would want to spend the CTB dollars first on those sections. After that, again, it would be up to this group what they want to do with CVTA money, and up to Mr. Brown what he wanted to do with the CTB money.
Thank you.
Barb.
As far as federalizing goes, for a trail project, having a federalized contract, in my opinion, that doesn't really add a huge amount of cost or time to a project, especially a project of this type. What do you guys think, Vdot?
Barb, just very generally, I think our approach was trying to see if we could make a design build package as attractive as possible. So at any step in the process where we can make it a little bit less cumbersome, that was certainly seen as an advantage. If the dollars that are put on a project are not specifically federal, and we do not have to anticipate that they could be federalized at some point in the future, it's just a step in the process that we don't have to do unnecessarily. That's all.
Right. So anyway, down here on package 1, those that little gray section, if it makes it easier, Chesterfield can administer those projects, but that might complicate it. I don't know. As far as a design build goes, if we could get those knocked out ahead of the design build, but I guess programming wise, that money is not showing up anytime soon, probably.
So Barbara, a couple of things with that. When we had our discussions with the design build folks downtown, the desire was certainly to have a continuous segment, but having a break in it, especially just a relatively small break, like is shown in gray right there, was not a deal killer. So if those were to proceed separately and not be included in the package with the green, blue, and gold, again, not a deal killer, not a problem. We could still advance that section. And we also don't have to move that forward as a design build. If the desire would be to move one of the other packages forward as a design build and maybe take this one forward as a design bid build, again, that's an option on the table.
Right. So the manpower issue really is with design build.
Correct.
We could do design build and a design bid build.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks.
So before we move back to Joe, Miles, I just want to make sure that you are good, that your question had been answered. Did you have anything further?
No, I didn't have anything else, Mr. Chairman. Joe already covered my questions. Thanks.
Joe, did you have something else?
I did. Again, for clarification, on the 3 maps, there's provided anticipated advertisement date. What is that based upon? Or in other words, is that just one scenario, or is that the earliest that each one of those segments, everything else being equal, that's the earliest that phase package 2 could go forward? Late 22 is the earliest package 1 could go forward, or does something change that?
Joe, what you've described is correct. We think that the earliest we could move forward with any of these 3 packages would be on the dates that are shown. Certainly an anticipated advertisement that might go into mid 2023 for package 22 could be tied to the possibility of that being a second package. If we were to able to move forward with that one as a first package option, there is the potential that we could move forward at the end of this calendar year as well.
Generally speaking, Mark, what makes package 1 able to go ahead of package 2, for example? What is the main difference there? Why are the dates not equal?
Joe, honestly, it was simply moving forward with, if we were to move forward with 3 different packages, like Shane had said earlier, we don't anticipate being able to move forward with 3 packages at any given time. If we were to pick one, it doesn't matter whether it's 1, 2, or 3. We anticipate being able to move one package forward, whichever one that might be, in late 2022. So this was a scenario. This was an option that certainly is up for discussion.
Okay, I got you. That changes things. I hope everybody heard that. So basically any of the packages, the earliest would be late 22, doesn't matter which one was selected. But because of manpower, only one, possibly two could go design and build.
And Joe, I will tell you, just for full disclosure, that's a bit of a stretch. The idea, certainly with any design build packages, we get to a 30% design level, just generally speaking, to take it out. So we're certainly moving forward with that goal of getting something positioned to be able to move forward in late calendar 2022.
That's it. Thanks, Mark.
So I'll have a couple questions for Mark and Liz and Shane, and then comment and update for the group. So the estimates for the design build packages are based on, I guess, combination of things out of the original A to P study. I assume you'll update it based on anticipated inflation that everybody's seeing right now in projects, as well as I assume from based on input from the central office design build group. But I guess and you're welcome to correct me on any of that, but also because we still don't have the design guidelines, you're going to have made several base assumptions on some of the trail components, for example, trail width and other factors. So can you speak to that slightly a little bit?
Todd, I think the way you summarized it relative to where we are with estimates are exactly correct. Certainly for the design build options that we were packaging as potential options moving forward. If we were to move forward with an advertisement in late 2022, it made sense for us to have calendar $23 as our estimate total. Again, these are estimates that have been re-reviewed after the Ashland to Petersburg Trail study was done. We've certainly provided updated information to both Mr. Brown and to CVTA regarding kind of our latest and best cost estimates that are available today. We do have WRA working with us to provide some assistance and kind of a second set of eyes on those estimates to make sure that we're giving them a good scrub so that as funding decisions are being made, they're being made with the best available information. So if from a phasing plan, again, the calendar $23 are anticipating that potentially one of these projects may move forward right now or quickly.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so for the benefit of the group, Mark mentioned WRA is on their on-call bench and helping with some of these efforts on these packages and estimates. WRA is also under contract through Henrico County. One is on an on-call contract. The other was a RFP that they were awarded in combination with Arcane K to do basically the northern half of the Henrico sections as a design bid build. So they're anywhere from 70% plans or 60% plans on one piece and 15 moving quickly to 30% on the other piece. So they're going to be breaking out updated cost estimates for the core trail sections based on a 12-foot section through different terrain. The upper piece is primarily through Dominion transmission corridor, so that's very similar to what we have on the Hanover side of the fall line. And then the lower section is really more of an urban cross section that's running primarily parallel to roadways, including US Route 1. So I think we'll get some very informative information as we continue to find those designs, go through public involvement on what these real costs are looking like. Of course, we don't really know until we go out to bid. We have a section down coming out of Bryant Park Avenue, crossing from the city into County Park. It's a very small section, but again, it's got a major road crossing on Lakeside Avenue and parallel to a road with some right-of-way impacts. That's a revenue share project. That one is on schedule to potentially be ready to go to bid by end of this year. So again, we'll have some very good data points on cost as we move forward. To that point, we did have a meeting with Vdot folks, Liz and Jason Williams and a couple other folks, I think Fisher. Last week, we have been in conversations both with our administration and with Vdot, and we think it's best for not only Henrico County, but for the region to continue on the path that we already set up the entire 7+ miles in Henrico to continue to do as a design bid build with county administration in all sections. I think the advantages we see in that is it eliminates the additional, choke point or limitation of the ability for the design build packages to get out for the rest of the sections, because we're administering those independently. We have a combination of funding already in line. I think about 21 million of either county funds and or grant funding between revenue share and CMAQ, HIP money, and TA money for a number of sections. We have pending applications for additional TA money for 2 to 3 of the sections, and then the balance we would potentially pursue CBTA regional funding to the amount of less than what we've calculated Henrico is contributing to the regional pot for the first 2 years. What that would do is brings in the cost of the trail cheaper, because we would have several sections that are non-federalized. Back to your question earlier, Barb, we're finding that the non-federalized sections are moving much quicker and approximately 30% cheaper than the federalized sections. For example, and I'm only pointing this out because I've brought this to the attention of Shane and others at the district, that we've had an agreement that we've been trying to get executed and notice to proceed for PE for one of the federal pieces. We went to our board with the agreement back in November. My update from the district is that should be maybe executed this week, if not end of last week. I haven't gotten that update, Mark, for signature at central office, but we still have to wait for federal authorization. So that's delaying a project that's otherwise, we have a consultant standing by to start design. We've already done survey in-house. We've done preliminary environmental work in-house out of our own pocket. And we have a 3-month delay going on 4 months just to get started.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, Barb.
So 30% more and slower versus a locally funded, locally administered.
Correct. By local, I mean either 100% county funds or the scenarios where we use CBTA regional, which is essentially local funding. Now, we'll clarify that still will have Vdot review and involvement, because if the expectation is Vdot will be maintaining many sections of the trail, including many of the sections in Henrico, we still need Vdot involvement on review and sign off on plans. But
right, I was going to say, it sounds like some of the delays that you're having aren't necessarily because it's federal. It's because you're coordinating and entering into agreements with Vdot. And
it's a combination of that. But even once we have the agreement, it still has to go through FHWA for authorization and notice to proceed.
Yeah,
and there's just inherent delays in that process. Sometimes they go quickly, sometimes they don't. So
yeah.
So Mark and Liz, back to another question I had, not to beat the dead horse of what's in CBTA and what's not in CBTA, but under package 1, Does this package start at mile 0 or mile 42 or 43, whatever way we're orienting the trail? Is that the very beginning of the trail?
0.
That's 0.
It is the very beginning, yeah.
Yep, exactly.
What I would say one of our priorities is on delivering the sections for Henrico is either make sure that the trail sections are on a schedule that will have them either built together or very close to together, or at least have logical termini if we're going to have a gap in timing, so that we have projects of independent utility and we don't have a trail that just starts somewhere and ends somewhere. So I can't speak to the lower section, Barb through Chesterfield and Colonial Heights and Petersburg, and what that looks like. I will say that, my knowledge on the upper end of, town of Ashland has essentially built their section all the way to the town limit. So this design package too picks up where that trail has been built, and then would tie into a section that we're picking up on south of the Chickahominy that will be either ahead of or very close to the schedule for that design build package, depending on when that happens. So we would have a continuous trail through that portion.
I can address the southern section for you in that regard. So the gold section goes through the VSU campus and will tie into the Appomattox River Trail system, which is a east-west system along the river. It also ties into historic downtown Petersburg. There's a trailhead on the southern side of the river already. Then the green section is pretty much an old railroad right-of-way. Some of that gray section too, and I guess the blue. I guess all that's in old railroad right-of-way. But the northern end of the green section connects into the village of Chester, which is a little urban-y area, very walkable, lots of sidewalk, lots of destinations. And it to the north of that ties into an existing trail that's called the Chester Linear Park. So that continues a little bit farther north, kind of where that 2C tap pending label is, which is really not correct. That tap project is much shorter. And it is really just crossing Route 10, which is where that green section ends, which is, primary road running through the village of Chester. So this section does have good independent utility. It's serving VSU students, the historic Petersburg area, the Appomattox River Trail, Colonial Heights, another urban-y kind of area, and then the village of Chester.
Thank you for that clarification. I look forward to riding that area once it's all done. So
I think the green part will be nice in particular.
So that was my, I guess, not to jump ahead to the local updates, but that was kind of how we're framing our perspective on the trail, at least on the upper end, and as well as project delivery and connectivity. So Joe, you had a question, comment?
Just on this package 1, the total distance is listed as 8.45 miles, and the 3 segments, green, blue, and gold, total 5.25, meaning that gray area would be 3.2, and I don't think that's correct. So are those distances correct? Or
They were supposed to be, but we can take another look.
maybe it's grabbing some of the gray north of
Yeah.
the green segment, but that's not how the heavy dark black bracket is shown.
We'll get some clarification on that.
Yep, thanks, Joe.
So, Mr. Chairman, and perhaps you're going to get to this, but how do we get to the next step? What is the next step in terms of, I presumably coming up with a recommendation that would go to the TAC and then forward to the authority?
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at that, and Chet and others are, and as well as I think Shane had to jump off, but Mark and Liz. So yeah, I mean, I think we have several big decisions in front of us as a group that I assume the process would be the working group makes a recommendation that goes to TAC for further discussion, and then recommendation to the full authority for, I guess, funding out of the CVTA committed funds, the 104.5 million. And then I suspect that concurrently Vdot wants some direction from the group on, what packages, what priority, and then that informs what funding, whether it's the CTP funding, the CVTA funding, or a combination thereof, so that they can move forward with what they need to do to get design build packages ready, with the goal of having something out by end of this year. And Shane did put something in the chat regarding kind of that expectation. So Mark, Liz, I want to see if y'all have anything to add or clarify on that.
I think you've summarized it. I think you've summarized it well.
Chet, do you concur as far as what this group needs to do?
I do. I think it sounds like it's pretty critical, knowing that there is a shortfall outside of what CVTA has committed, knowing that CTB has also committed funding for the TAC to clarify over and above the CVTA committed funds what our priorities are, and where the request might be for commitment of those additional CTB dollars, as well as anything else. And obviously all this depends on the budget.
Right. And another consideration that we haven't really discussed today is there's a number of pending applications for various funding out there. I mean, some of these are noted in here with regard to pending TA, just as we have several segments, and I believe Chesterfield and maybe the city. There's also any pending smart scale applications for this current round that just opened up in pre-apps this week, as well as any requests through the CVTA regional funding that is for FY23 through 26. So we have to sort of consider all that as well. Barb, you had additional comment, question?
I would like to propose that we move forward in this way, that we support and recommend that the CVTA direct Vdot to move forward with package 1 and package 2, and that this group at our next meeting develop our next phase and sort of an overall phasing plan to deliver projects that we can within the funding that we know we've got, the 144 million or whatever that number is. The remaining, so the first two sections, package 1 and 2, that eats up about 44 million, and that leaves $100 million that we still need to develop a phasing plan for.
So that sounds like you might be making a motion.
Yes, so that my recommendation, I would make a motion to recommend to the CVTA that we ask Vdot to move forward with package 1 and 2, and that this committee develop a phasing plan for the remaining funding.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Well, I guess we need I would like to get a clarification. I don't know if I should second that or ask for the clarification first.
You need I think you need a second, and then you.
Yes, sir. Recommend a second.
Oh, okay. That was your second, Chet?
No, I'm recommending that we do have a second before discussion.
Okay, I'll second it, and then I have a question for clarification.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second, and now we will have take discussion.
So,
Joe, you can go.
So Barb, with your motion, as I recall from the earlier discussion, Mark indicated that, you know, one of these could go design build, the other one could go design bid build. Possibly, Mr. Mann said that both could go design bid build. So would we leave that up to Vdot, or maybe that would be my suggestion, that they schedule these in a way that would be the most expeditious to accomplish both package 1 and 2, regardless of the method. So if they could accomplish them faster by doing one design build and the other one design bid build, we don't care, as long as it was the most expeditious way to accomplish both. Is that what you're saying?
I think leaving that up to VDOT is fine with me.
That's fine with us as well.
All right, any other discussion?
Quick question, Todd.
Yes, Eric.
So this this motion with the second is to recommend, as you described the process moving forward, is to recommend to the TAC, which would conceivably then, if they concurred with this recommendation, to then recommend to the full CVTA to work with VDOT, or to request this from VDOT.
Yeah, sorry. I forget who we are.
Yeah, that would be my understanding. Chet's giving a thumbs up.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure that chain of events is understood. Thank you.
That's why we have you here, to keep us in line. All right, Joe, your hand is still raised.
It was still up, but since it's up, and just to further clarify, the package 1 does would require some CTB funding. So presumably part of this motion would then be for VDOT to engage Mr. Brown to obtain the necessary funds, CTB funds, to accomplish that segment.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Mark and Liz, is that simply a consultation with Mr. Brown to get his concurrence? Does it take CTB action? What's that look like?
We can certainly clarify that. The CTB action did put dollars onto a holding UPC, if you will, for projects to be determined at a later time, specifics to be determined at a later time. In theory, it could be as simple as creating child UPC projects to that one that was already approved by the CTB. But you guys are exactly correct. The next step in that process would simply be engaging Mr. Brown to make sure that we have his support for any proposal that uses any of those funds. Frankly, with his support, I don't know that the rest of the process would be problematic in any way.
Okay, so as chair, I'd like to weigh in on something before we take a vote. So to take a phrase that Chair Thornton uses frequently in the collegiality, spirit of collegiality here, we have potentially projects here that benefit I'll go north to south, Ashland by virtue of continuing the effort they've done, Hanover by completing the section through Hanover, Henrico by connecting 2 sections we're currently working on, and then skipping the city, picking back up in sections in Chesterfield, Colonial Heights, and Petersburg. So I think we're silent on the city at this point, with consideration of the points that Dorana made, that we don't want to have everything built on north and south and then have a gap in the city that we haven't really been paying attention to because it's quote unquote hard. So I think we need to give consideration of how we can move sections within the city further. That doesn't necessarily need be part of this motion unless somebody wants to make an amendment, but I think we need to.
It was part of the motion,
All right, what is that?
which is that the CBTA direct this working group to come up with a phasing plan for the remaining.
Okay.
And I guess I didn't spell it out, but we need to take into account Dorona's comments previously, is that we can't necessarily just look for the low hanging fruit.
Okay.
We need to be sure that, just as you pointed out, that we're not leaving a gap in the middle.
So my apologies that was implied in your motion, but yeah, I mean, we need to, I guess, come up with a plan to move all the sections forward beyond what's specifically in these packages. So I think as long as that's clear as it goes through the TAC and the full authority, I'm comfortable with that. So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. Janice?
Mr. Chair, I think we could probably do a roll call, a voice vote with everyone, since this is a work group.
Okay. If
That's fine.
appropriate. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries.
Chet, Janice, are you all clear on the scope of the motion for
Yes.
memorialization purposes? Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. That was a very long discussion, but productive. So thank you. So moving on to item 5, locality updates on jurisdictional fall line trail projects. Anybody have any updates for the group?
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dorena.
I know at our last council meeting, I guess it was the 28th, our city council passed the resolution for the CAO to sign our MOA with Vdot. So I don't know where anybody else was with that on the maintenance.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Dorana. So Henrico also had a MOA that was sent to us that we did not take to our board, but the county manager did execute and send it back to central office. I'm not aware that it has been executed at central office. Mark or Liz, I don't know if y'all have any information on that.
It would help if I unmuted. I know Shane did check with Joanne Maxwell yesterday or the day before, and at that point, we did not have an update on where they were for execution, but I know Shane has reached out to Joanne to find out where they are.
Great, thank you. And as I understand it, they worked with the effort for the city and Henrico first, because I guess we were the most complicated. So what that looks like in the other localities, I don't know. I think part of it depends on who's expected to maintain, who's going to be administering projects and so forth. So beyond that, I don't really have additional information. I'll real quickly, I kind of covered where our progress was on our various sections, but like I said, we are moving forward on as design bid build on all of our sections. We will probably need to work with this group further on as we continue to get refined cost estimates as we move through the design phase on what balance of funding looks like, as well as what status of existing grant applications are. But I think in summary, we were already too far along to really push pause and move into design build packages for our sections. We're already in negotiation with a number of stakeholders on potential easements and so forth. We're in the process of setting up a meeting with Dominion to go over design specifics regarding the impact to their transmission corridor. So whatever we're able to accomplish through those negotiations and discussions will certainly benefit the section as it rolls through Hanover. So it's very similar section between our Longdale, the upper end of our Longdale phase and the Hanover piece, so, as well as the Chickahominy piece. So I don't think that meeting date has been set. I think we're shooting for end of this week, but it looks like that's going to get pushed out a week or two. But that hopefully will shed a lot of light on any challenges in addressing any concerns Dominion has with respect to their transmission corridor. So, I don't know that there's any sections in the other localities that will have those same level of impacts with Dominion. So other than that, that's all I had. We can move on to future topics. And I know actually before we do that, and we did not put it as an agenda item, but Chet and Eric, we want to talk about the SPAs a little bit.
I've got to run to another CVTA meeting in about 5 minutes, but real quick, now that we have a better understanding of direction going forward, I think we will be needing to work with respective local legal counsel and Vdot legal counsel on the SPA for these two particular sections of the Fall Line Trail and those projects. So we'll get moving on that now, and we'll be in touch.
Great. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've got to run too with Eric, but I did want to point out that I was looking at the Senate budget item that Shane shared the link to, and I think we need to be clear that the 40 million is not new money. It looks like it's set aside from the TAP program, so it's taking from one of our resources and putting into another. It's just a question of how the applications and the competitiveness is organized. So we'll keep an eye on it. I appreciate the information, Vdot.
Great, thank you. Last item, if anybody has anything else, is next meeting. I did get a note from Louise Lockett yesterday when she saw this agenda that the next meeting scheduled date on here is April 6th in the morning. That conflicts with the next Friends of Fall Line meeting, which unfortunately was not on my calendar, but she did clarify that it is that date. So we may need to push this meeting out, either out or up by a week or two. Do we need to do another when is good poll?
You could do that. Yep.
I like the Wednesday date. So if people have flexibility to do it on a different Wednesday, either before or after, maybe that would be a date to look at. Anybody have any strong opinions one way or the other?
If it is important to have this meeting before the TAC, then it might make sense to do it the week earlier.
I don't know. It's essential that we meet before.
Okay.
It might be helpful.
That's the 11th is the TAC meeting.
Okay.
We can send out a when is poll.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that and include the week before and the week after maybe.
Okay.
All right. If nobody has anything else, we can adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.